I noticed you have the guitar in the office today. What's up with that?
The reason I have it is because I am hosting open mic tonight. It's one of the things I do every couple weeks at a wonderful club called the Egremont Barn. And there's an AI twist. Do you want to hear about it?
I do. I want to hear all about it.
So for a while, I've been doing this thing I call the open mic Turing test, right? So the Turing test was, can you tell whether or not something was written by AI, simplified. And so I'll take two songs, one that I wrote, like with my human intelligence, and then one that I use ChatGPT for to help me write the lyrics for.
So what song are you doing tonight?
So the one that I wrote myself is called The Eastern Shore. It's a lovely song about a couple that's separated for a couple days. And then the one that was written with some AI support is called This Call May Drop, But You Will Never Lose Me. And I'll explain. So in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts where I live, we still have cell phone connection issues. So the calls will drop all the time. And I was talking to my sweetheart and I said, this call may drop, but you will never lose me, because I knew I was going to go into a dead zone. And I thought to myself, wow, that is a really good hook for a song. So I pulled over the side of the road, fired up the old ChatGPT, and literally in a little bit of time had the lyrics for a song, went home, wrote it. I always revise it by about 25%, but it was a good song.
I can't wait to hear it. Is it like country, rock and roll? What genre would you say?
I mean, everything's like singer-songwriter for me. You know, it's like, this call may drop, but you will never lose me. With every word and heartbeat, it's you I long to see. Right? Isn't that, so sweet.
So sweet.
Yeah, so the audience is like, it's funny because they'll clap more enthusiastically for that song because they want to believe I wrote it. But no, it was the AI. I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Rade.
And this is ChatEDU, a podcast about AI in K-12 education. In today's episode, Guilt Trip, we'll talk about why educators sometimes feel guilty when using AI and how to process that.
But first, in the news, Matt will introduce some new tools for making music with AI.
Liz will discuss how one district is putting students at the center of their AI efforts.
And Matt will explore a trifecta of AI stories from two large city school districts.
And finally, Liz will examine how and why universities are creating their own custom bots and what we can learn from that in K-12. Then we'll go beneath the surface as we examine the guilty feelings we sometimes experience using AI and provide a framework to think about that and hopefully move our way through it.
And we'll end with a new listener question and our pal Pi in chatback. So Matt, let's keep talking music. I understand Google just released a new AI music generation tool, and that's just one of several in this space.
Yeah, generative AI in the world of music is heating up. Google had released a while back in their AI test kitchen something called Music LM, and now they've added to that Music FX. And with Music FX, you can put in a prompt and it will go ahead and write a song for you. Now, there's also this thing called Suno, which is really cool. That plays the entire thing. So you can put in a prompt, and it adds the lyrics and the scoring. You can give it different genres. And I have to say, it's pretty compelling. I've made a couple, but we have a friend of the pod named Darren Vigliotti. He's a principal over in our corner of the world. Actually, Darren's got a cool podcast called Beautiful Illusions. And he made one that he sent over to me. And his prompt was, write a song called Internal Tides about the moon and the tide system as a metaphor for our internal feelings. Let me give you a little taste here.
Like the moon in the sky, our emotions rise and they fall. As the tides ebb and flow, so do we, one and all. We're caught in a rhythm, a cosmic ebb and tide.
All right, so mind you, right, Darren didn't write the lyrics. It's not like my This Call Will Drop, But You'll Never Lose Me, where AI wrote the lyrics, I then did the score, I wrote the music, I played the guitar, blah, blah, blah. This thing just kind of soup to nuts, took the whole experience. And Darren commented to me that he was sort of blown away and he wasn't quite sure how to feel about it, right? Because did he really create it? Is he the creative author of this? And I think that's one of the interesting things that we'll have to do a little bit of thinking about. I don't know. What'd you think of it?
I mean, it sounded great, and I can't believe that AI generated it and that it did all of that. But I can empathize or think about that feeling of fear as artists. Where is the value in writing songs and creating the scores and playing the music if AI is going to generate it? And, you know, how is that going to play out for artists and musicians? In fact, Earlier this month, over 200 musicians, including big names like Billie Eilish, Nicki Minaj, Katy Perry, they sent an open letter to AI developers urging them to stop using AI in ways that infringe upon their value as artists.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. And now there's yet another one of these tools called Udio. It all just keeps coming. But, I mean, Liz, who knows? Even in the hands of musicians, there may be a time and a place where it makes some sense. It's funny, I mean, going back to the barn where I host open mic, I've been thinking more and more that as we see more AI-generated art, the experience of going to see an authentic musician play live music, I mean, just these things that are visceral, that are human, that are authentic, I wonder if the stature of these musicians is actually going to rise because it's not rare, right? But we're swimming in all this AI-generated stuff. So how cool is it to see a real human being? It's interesting, too. I had not written original music in about 20 years, myself personally. I've done a half dozen of these AI lyric generation. I got relatively inspired from that creative process, and I've gone now and written a couple songs, which are the first songs I've written on my own, sans AI, in about 20 years. So, you know, in some ways, you don't know. Maybe it's really going to prompt creativity that we didn't expect or anticipate.
When I think about music, I was a musician as a kid, and it's really easy for me to memorize lyrics, as it is for many kids. So I'm almost thinking about my daughter who knows so many lyrics. Like, could I have AI turn some of her content into songs that she can then remember? I remember doing it as a kid and putting science content to the tune of a song to make it easier to remember.
Sorry, I just have to chuckle here for a second. Carry on. I think the audience will understand my laughter.
But you know, I can tell you, like, C is for cold front, cumulus and cumulonimbus, thunderheads and narrow bands at the front. That's 8th grade earth science with Doc Passow. But I never forgot it because of the music. And so I'm wondering if using AI, if Taya could remember a song that sounds like Taylor Swift about content, it might be easier for her to remember.
Sure. Is Doc, who is it again? Doc
Passow, one of my absolute favorite science teachers ever.
You need to tell him about ChatEDU. Did you write that song or did Doc write that song?
No, my friend Teen and I wrote that song.
Oh, nice. Doc's very proud. So teachers in under 2 years have suddenly become media producers, whether it's doing images with Adobe Firefly or soon the video tool from OpenAI Sora is going to be released. We've talked a little bit about 11 Labs, which does this kind of voice acting. Now there's Suno for music production. It's fascinating to think about teachers are able to create with a single prompt high-quality media to impact their classrooms in positive ways, but then also occasionally, hopefully, just like Doc, to come up with things that are authentic right in the classroom. Liz, there's something going on up in the mountains in Colorado. I heard a great interview on a really wonderful podcast called the AI Education Conversation about St. Vrain Valley schools in Colorado, where students are really in the mix when they're doing their AI planning efforts. And then you shared another story from a school in Colorado that's all about students taking the lead in this space. So tell us about it.
This was such a great example of involving students in their own education around AI. So a group of students at Vail Mountain School, which is an independent school, were invited by a teacher to create an AI committee to work with their teachers on how to use AI in schools. It's been so interesting. The students have been talking about how there are different use cases in different classes. And so maybe what's okay in science class may not be okay in ELA or English class or history class. And they want the teachers and the students to understand how to use tech in an ethical, productive way. And initially in 2022, just like many other schools and teachers' reactions, as soon as it came out, it was like, ban it, avoid it. We don't want kids using it. It's cheating. But now the students are helping teachers understand how to use it and learn about it. They're helping their peers learn about it and use it. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting is that in this group that they're in, they're also talking about the consequences for inappropriate use. Just think that when students are given that level of responsibility where they are not just part of their education, but really elevated to a position of leadership, they're so much more invested in the rules and the consequences because they're coming from them, not just being handed down from the top.
So we've seen this in our interviews with students where they're like, no, you know what? I feel like my voice, my authenticity, my writing goes well beyond what a chatbot can do. Or I can see using the AI in some context, but I totally want to own another part of this space. I think we think of this as a binary, and in reality, they're way more nuanced, especially the high school kids, right, in their thinking about it. So great story. I'm so glad that you were able to capture that.
Let's come down from the mountains and explore some big city stories on the coasts. What's happening in New York and LA?
Down in the cities where the air is a little bit less thin, we've got some wins. We have a potential fail as well, but really interesting stories from both LAUSD and the New York City Public Schools. Let's start with one story in New York. There are two really neat organizations. One's called Teaching Matters and the other is Urban Assembly. They've both been using AI to take snapshots of teachers in the classroom with video. Two different systems, but similar approach. And the AI is then doing an analysis of a variety of teaching strategies. They're able to see sort of the teacher moves, they listen, they understand context, they're able to look at levels of participation, questioning strategy, and then they use AI to give real-time feedback for teachers to help them think about their instructional practice.
Is it being used evaluatively or is it just for their own practice? I'd be a little concerned if it was to evaluate me.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that is, as educators and administrators start thinking about AI for these types of purposes, that you're exactly right. That's like a central question. And so no, not at all. They really are using this to empower educators, to enhance teaching and learning, take this resource-constrained environment. It's tough to get an adult, a principal, a curriculum leader, a department chair into a classroom to give feedback. And so this is totally formative. It's designed simply to support the teacher and give them feedback. And I've actually worked in a district where the teachers union has proposed this as a way of kind of getting out ahead of the idea of AI being used as an evaluative tool, because here's an unbiased instrument to help them really think through this. And it's wild. It even captures the social emotional learning component of the classroom. Both organizations shared that there were some struggles with cultural understanding, language understanding, but I'm sure the AI systems are going to get much better about that.
Well, I'm glad it's not being used for evaluation right now. And I think any opportunity that teachers have to get some feedback is great. We've also proposed that if AI can help get principals and assistant principals out of their offices because some of these tasks are taken over by AI, we've been really encouraged by the idea that more authentic support can happen from humans. We'll have to see which way it goes, and hopefully there can be both.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just a fun, creative use of AI, and a couple of these stories are around that. All right, now, in the same fair city, and mind you, this is kind of narrowly reported by the Post, so I'm just going to say that there has been this new company called Your Way. The Way is WAI. Get the kind of clever hook there.
Clever.
Yeah, so it's a company called Link. They've been working in New York City for a number of years now. Millions of dollars of kind of vendor resources around professional development and curriculum integration. And there's a little controversy because they have a pilot running where teachers are using the Your Way system to do lesson planning. It's an instrument, a generative AI instrument to help them write lessons and create rubrics and do differentiation strategies. On the website, there were a number of testimonials from New York City educators, quote unquote, and it turned out that some of those people, well, maybe we'll call them a hallucination, but they weren't real. So they have been removed from the site, and there's a lot of, kind of hue and cry about this issue.
Yeah, that's not a great look to have your testimonials all not be real. I assume that Your Way is similar to many other school-based programs that we've seen where it is like a wrapper sitting on top of a large language model. And what that does is make it very easy for teachers to use it. So they can go in, they can do a drop down. I need a third grade lesson for science, and this is the content I want. And it's a quick win. They get this lesson that they're really excited about. But the drawback is that the teachers aren't learning to be prompt engineers, and they won't be able to necessarily teach their students to be prompt engineers, where they could get a very similar output if they just use ChatGPT or another large language model, but they have to understand what to put in for the prompt, where the wrapper kind of does it for them in the back end. It tells the the large language model third grade lesson on whichever content, whichever standard, and it's taking some of the work out for the teachers. And what we advocate is that teachers really need to learn how to prompt and how to have the conversation to get from that first output, which might be a C plus level lesson, to that really rockin' A plus, I love it lesson.
Yeah, I love that you give it the grade piece. It's funny, I've been doing that. I think I've probably asked this to 1,000 teachers now. We're in a session doing prompting. They do a first cut using like Perplexity or whatever tool is accessible, but it's an open tool that they can go back and forth with rather than one of these wrappers. I'll ask them, what's the grade? Like, how good is the lesson? How good is the rubric? How good is the draft letter home? Whatever the case may be. It is consistently C plus B minus. And the skill of learning how to treat the AI as a kind and loving unpaid intern that you have a conversation with, right? Oh, I think you misunderstand. I have a lot of English language learners in my class, or I need this type of differentiation strategy, or I have this amount of time. It is in the back and forth conversation that you go from C plus to A, or something that they really need to walk away with. So I think that's about right. Now in LA, totally different kind of story, right? The LA Unified School District has released a new tool called ED, very clever, and it's a chatbot that's really designed to assist students through the planning phases, right? So it's kind of like the superintendent described it as something that demystifies the navigation of the day. It crunches the data in a way that brings students what they need. At its core, ED's designed to give students immediate answers about where they stand, what they need to do to make progress, or more immediately even like, where's my bus and what time will it arrive? And so it's a different type of AI, right? It's trying to use all this intelligence that it's been trained on inside the district to help guide students and their parents to plan where they are, where they're going, and what's the next step. It's a really novel, interesting use. I think we'll have to see, does it hallucinate? Are there challenges around it? But like the Teaching Matters and Urban Assemblies example from the first story, Ed from LAUSD reflects, I think, a different type of a novel, interesting use that's really worth testing and sounding out.
Sounds like Ed opens up a lot of opportunities and different ways to use AI. So I'm thinking about students with 504 plans or IEPs that are written in educational jargon, and they are very hard to understand and navigate if you are not someone that is familiar with that language. I'm wondering if Ed is able to use the IEPs as part of that, where students are, where they're going, what they need, and if the AI for a parent could translate it into a more understandable English or a more understandable different language that parents can then understand how that IEP connects to where they are, where they're going, what they need to do in a language that's understandable, whether it's just bringing it down to a layperson's English or into another language.
I love that. That's like right in this lane. I don't know if the superintendent has that on his list, but send him a note.
Will do.
Okay, awesome. So, we mostly focus on K-12, but we certainly keep an eye on higher ed in this kind of AI and education space. And in a way, like LAUSD, some universities are starting to build campus-wide AI systems. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I did some reading about that this week. And what a good handful of universities are doing is building their own unique model. And one of the reasons that is so near and dear to my heart is because of equity. And we've talked about equity a lot in the K-12 arena because we want students to learn how to use it, because we know that the gap is going to be very wide if we don't teach all students how to use it. And at the university level, I think we're assuming that all students are using it, but they may not have equal access to the tools. ChatGPT 4 costs $20 a month, which over the course of a year is $240, which not every kid has, especially not every college student has to spend. And so it becomes this divide of the haves and the have-nots of the kids who can afford to buy ChatGPT 4, which is more current, faster, better, versus the kids who can only access ChatGPT 3.5 for free. And so universities have said, enough of that. We're going to give you a system that is built on perhaps ChatGPT 4 or whatever platform that everyone can have access to. They also can use it and get even more specific towards their particular courses. So they can have professors upload past exams, past lecture notes, content from their curricula that makes it even more specific. So if you are at that specific university and asking questions, it understands, and you tell it you're asking questions about Calc 101, it understands it's Calc 101, not just Calc 101. I think it may be a direction a lot of universities are going to go in if they want the best AI experiences for their students that are also equitable.
It feels very similar into the student pilots that we've been running, and what we keep seeing is that it makes teachers more comfortable. And I have to imagine that's true of these professors, right? If they can write custom prompts that align to the work that they're doing, or have a specific way that it can give feedback on student writing in real time, or as you say, kind of be trained on local data, it becomes more purpose-built to an educational outcome and will make it easier for professors and teachers to embrace this type of technology. Very cool stuff.
So, Matt, I just spent the weekend with my Catholic Italian family, so guilt is on my mind.
I love it. Let's guilt out.
It's been more than a year since ChatGPT was made public and set the tech world abuzz. So while I may feel guilty at home, I love guilt at work. A recent survey of 2,000 employees reported that 50% admitted to using generative AI at work without letting their employers know, and 64% passed off AI-generated work as their own.
Huh. I can't place it, but that sounds so familiar. But carry on.
Oh, interesting. So Forbes published a study with the headline that 36% of Gen Z employees feel guilty about using AI at work. And this resonates with me and you because we both have had those feelings from time to time. And we certainly hear teachers and admin expressing these same sentiments in our work at schools. So unpack that a little bit.
I'd love to, Liz. So one of the places this shows up a lot for both of us are during these AI prompting sessions that we run with teachers and administrators, right? So there are some crafted prompts that we pre-plan, and then teachers plug those prompts in as a way of learning how to use AI. Sometimes we'll use Perplexity or an open tool, as we were saying in the previous segment, right, about how they can learn to go back and forth and get really good outputs. So let's think about 3 different prompts and the kind of guilt factors. There's a guilt score here. One of the first ones that I do a lot is, you're an expert lesson designer. Please help me design a lesson about. They insert the grade and the subject level, and they tell the AI to be sure to include objectives, essential questions, et cetera, et cetera. You'll notice in all these, it will start with you're an expert something or you're a world-class something. 2 factors there. We're giving the AI a role in context, which we know from our Star Trek conversation, for instance, in the last episode, that it does well with roles in context. And I'm a consistent believer that if you puff up the AI and are kind to it, it will be kind to us when the AI overlords take over and it performs better. You down?
And we've seen that. Does better when you're nice to it.
Right, exactly. So here's one. You're an expert lesson designer. The second one might be you have a knack for developing high leverage strategies, including learning targets, flexible grouping, effective feedback. And then please brainstorm strategies for, then they would insert the topic area they want to focus on. The third one might be a curriculum audit, and this is around these things that we call durable and vulnerable activities. So a vulnerable activity is one that a chatbot can do easily for a kid. Durable is a more hands-on activity where the student needs to use their own agency. We've loved using this as a strategy. So here you're a world-class curriculum auditor and AI expert. I'm seeking your expertise to come up with or to look at some of my lessons and tell me whether they're vulnerable or durable. So 3 different types of prompts, and I think they have different guilt scores. The first one, because it's close to the work that teachers do, right? They're really personally involved in designing lessons every day. It feels a little weird that AI is doing that work, at least as a co-pilot with them in some cases, or entirely. You know, coming up with high leverage strategies isn't something that they might do every day. It's like giving them a little bit of external feedback. The AI auditor one's fascinating because here they're really as if they are partnering with an expert in the field to give them feedback around something. It's not their area of domain excellence. And so it's not like guilt is a one-size-fits-all thing. You have different types of prompts. They evoke different kinds of feelings, and that's what we want to think through here a little bit. And I think you found this when doing prompting around homeschool communication or different kinds of communication, right?
Yeah, definitely the same thing. So let's look at a few of the prompts that I've done around communication. So you have a gift for conveying difficult messages with tact and respect. Guide me in drafting an email to a parent about insert an issue that respects their perspective while clearly expressing the concern.
Cell phone use in school, maybe?
Oh, perhaps. So that's the first example. Then another example, you have a knack for articulating classroom needs and advocating for support effectively. Help me write an email to administrator regarding the needs or concerns. Maybe you need some extra resources or clarification on a school policy that presents the situation clearly, underscores the importance for student success, and invites discussion on possible solutions. So this third one is a really fun prompt, and it's role-playing. You'll see.
Ooh, I'm excited. I like role play. Go ahead.
Okay, so the prompt is, you are great at working through problems that happen in a school environment. Please role play an issue with me where I state the problem area and then we go back and forth trying to find a good resolution. Rather than list a solution, we will each take a turn processing the issue and trying to get to a resolution. This back and forth will help me prepare for these types of issues when they arise in my classroom. Please be sure to end each response with a statement or question that helps us peel back the layers of an issue.
I'm cracking up here because I'm just going to say I'm not always a perfect partner. And over the years, once or twice, my partner may have said, I don't want you to tell me the answer. I just want you to listen and have a conversation. And that's what this feels like.
That's exactly what the chatbot can do.
Who needs me?
When you think about the guilt factor, again, there's these layers, right? That first example of writing the letter home feels very personal. That's a task that a teacher is very close to. And many teachers may feel a little guilty that they had a chatbot do the work for them, do that output. The second one, it's a little further away. They are really asking the chatbot to help them craft something that they already know the content for. They just want it to look good for the audience, which is the administrator. So they need to make it sound great. And the last one, there's not an end product, and it's a back and forth conversation that's just practice. And I don't think that there's that much guilt. In fact, I think people are really excited about using it that way. We've both used HeyPi in this way as well to, practice these difficult conversations. One of the first times I used HeyPi to do this was to practice calling somebody who didn't get a job I was interviewing for. And it was the first time I had to call somebody. I had never hired anybody before. And we interviewed 5 candidates, and 4 of them I had to call and say, you didn't get the job. But I had never done that before. And I did it with HeyPi. And it was really so great to have that chatbot experience.
Did they get to the end of that and say, wow, this is the best rejection I've ever had?
No.
Okay.
But I felt okay about it.
Oh, good.
So, Matt, there are so many other examples that we see teachers using the AI for and feeling guilty or not feeling guilty. Annual goals, letters of recommendation, report card comments. In each instance, teachers really need to find their personal comfort zone. And we, as we always say, be aware of that critical need to stay as a human in the loop. You don't want to just send that letter without reading it first and making your own edits.
Right. As a large language model, I believe that Johnny's cell phone use is really unacceptable. Right. Yeah. And if you back away even further from the classroom, sometimes for administrators, we see a different type of guilt trigger or not for prompts. I mean, think about a few that I use sometimes with administrators. Streamlining an administrative process, for instance. You're a skilled optimizer of school administrative processes, particularly in insert particular topic, right? Give me guidance on how to do this. Or I love this, policy evaluation. Here's a policy. Tell me the 10 ways that this policy might be misinterpreted. I mean, what a gem for an administrator that spends so much time after the fact where they can be proactive and use AI in a particularly helpful way. But then again, here's something like, help me use AI to write this teacher evaluation letter or this school suspension letter. The closer you get to the human beings in the work, the more that you really need to think a little bit about that. And again, where's the human in the loop in that equation? Are they a partner in that work, or are they really running the show?
For a change this week, I'll be the one to mention Ethan Mollick.
Oh, I love it.
So last summer, he did a post in praise of boring AI, all about the value of delegating tedious and boring tasks to AI or leveraging AI to increase efficiency and recapture some of that time. And I know we've both found some wins there. So what are some of your favorite ways, Matt?
Well, since you mentioned Ethan Mollick, I don't know if you've ever heard of these things, but they're called custom GPTs. Have I ever
Yeah,
mentioned that?
you've mentioned it once or twice.
Once or twice? Okay, yeah. So, I mean, the custom GPTs are a perfect example. I have one that I use every single day and multiple times a day. It's just an email feedback tool. I drop it in, it gives me feedback, it doesn't rewrite it. I'm sure I've even mentioned it here on the podcast. Another one I love for our pod is this thing called the ChatEDU Summarizer. I look at 20 stories a week or more. Some are quite long, some are academic studies. I'll drop the full text into the ChatEDU Summarizer. It's a custom GPT that's designed to give me a summary, give me 5 takeaways, and give me sort of action items for AI in education. Now, of course, I bring all my human intelligence lists to the equation, but I use it to save some time. Or think about images. I haven't gone back and done a Google image search for some time. I use images on all of my slides and, using Adobe Firefly or Dolly. I'm loving ideogram. So it just saves me time. And I'm never going to go back to doing it a different way where it would take more time.
Right. Yeah. I have also found ways to just reclaim some of my time and make things easier. So, we submit lots of proposals to conferences, and often you have to have an abstract that can't be more than 250 words or sometimes even 50 words. So I have used it to help cut my writing down to make it much shorter or more brief. And sometimes it does a great job. Sometimes there's a lot of conversation because it misses my key point. My colleague Caroline and I have been using it to help make us graphs and all sorts of data interpretation for the learner engagement and attendance program that we work on together. Every day I find ways to use it that make what I was going to do so much faster. ChatGPT has been great on helping me use Excel more efficiently as well, because I can just ask it exactly what I want to do, and I'm not Googling and looking for the help.
All great examples, right? In praise of boring AI, but they save us time.
So in our deep dives, we usually try to share 3 to 5 actionable takeaways on the topic. So, we're talking about guilt. Let's examine some ideas on how to think more clearly about these guilty feelings and maybe let the guilt go. One of those things is we have to recognize the value of time. And educators are pressed for time. Administrators are pressed for time. There's a lot of things that the AI can do that will help free up time, with the end result being that you can be more face-to-face with kids and more hands-on with kids and ultimately doing the stuff that you went into teaching to do, which is work with kids. It wasn't to write reports.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way is just so valuable.
I love that. A second is enhancing the quality of our work. In reality, there are some cases where the work that the AI is doing may exceed or go beyond the work that I might be able to do. And I'm getting kind of comfortable with that. I mean, even in AI songwriting, I always disclose, I'll say, this was a partnership between me and ChatGPT-4. But in reality, it's enabling me to do something that goes beyond my ability, and I'm fine with that, because it's just the better stuff's getting done more quickly and efficiently.
I think that goes along with shifting the mindset from replacement to augmentation. So the AI isn't replacing all of your effort or the work that you do, but it's making your work better. It's augmenting your work in a different way so that you can get rid of some of those mundane tasks and do something that makes you even better as an educator, that maybe you're not the most creative lesson planner and you can now do more creative lessons because the chatbot gives you some ideas for those. So we talk about it with student projects as well. It's a way to enhance their projects. They come up with better ideas or things they hadn't thought about. It's not doing the project. It's not doing the lesson. It's just making it better.
Yeah, Copilot, sure. A fourth, I think, is just transparency. So addressing the ethical use of AI, the planning teams that we support, the work that we do in districts. Some of this is about self-disclosure, just being clear when you're using AI, and also having some consistent policy. I sort of feel bad for all the Gen Z. I'm quite old, so I'm not in that little cohort. But the idea that 50% of them are using it at work and 64% are passing stuff off, if there was more transparency and just everybody knew what the rule was or what the standard was, not so much a rule, but like what's the ethical guidepost that as a learning organization we all agree on, let's be clear about it, and then let people operate within that framework. So I think clarity and transparency can go a long way.
Yeah, and the final one is focusing on the bigger picture. So ultimately, like I said, you went into teaching to foster learning, development, and preparation for the future. That was most likely the vast majority of people, that's why they go into teaching and education. And so using AI to handle repetitive and time-consuming tasks that don't require a human as closely in the loop to do every second of the work or every bit of the work, it allows you more time to do the great stuff. We always emphasize the importance of adapting to technological advancements and preparing students for a future where AI is going to play a significant role in many professions. So we have to think about that feeling of guilt and how to move past it, but we don't want to just say, don't feel guilty. We have to figure out a way that the guilt doesn't get in the way of good work.
I like that. Personally, I'm going to let the guilt go, at least most of the time, and embrace the idea of AI as a semi-trustworthy assistant. I think we have to be super clear about that, always worry about bias and hallucination and some of the limitations of the AI. But you know what? AI is here to help, doesn't need a bathroom break. I think we can all kind of find a happy medium.
So, Matt, as the wise Ferris Bueller once said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. I say embrace some extra me time for yourself. You deserve it.
Awesome. So for Chat Back this week, I'm going to relay a question, and we'll do this from time to time, questions that we hear during presentations or professional development sessions. We had our superintendent's conference a little while ago, and a superintendent asked me during a session what I thought about teacher ed preparation programs, and would teacher preparation programs be ready to help teachers navigate this new and different landscape that's being impacted so dramatically by AI. And I try to be glass half full, but in this particular case, I worried that the programs wouldn't necessarily be proactive because they are not always first to the game. But what do you think?
Well, I'm more of a half full person.
Ooh, look at you.
I will take the half full viewpoint. I read an article in EdWeek that the Relay Graduate School of Education is using AI-driven simulators to provide prospective teachers with practice opportunities before they enter real classrooms. These are simulations where they can work on those foundational teaching skills, understanding student interests, setting up classroom routines, and having these interactive scenarios with both AI-generated students and AI mentors, and then they can get some feedback. To be clear, this is not replacing student teaching, but often students have a couple of semesters before they get into the classroom. This could be a great way for them to practice in a very safe environment where you're not with actual students. And I'd never student taught. I just was thrown right into a
really?
Catholic school classroom.
Wow.
And yeah, I could have used some simulations prior to literally my first day of teaching. I had 24 sixth graders staring at me ready to go. And I was like, I don't even know where the bathroom is.
Woohoo! Let's go. Yeah, I would have loved this too. I mean, I'm trying to think back to my 1991 self. I couldn't even imagine something like this, but how helpful would it be? And plus, how scalable is this, right? I mean, it's basically a series of customized bots, yet again, that aren't taking a big chunk of the curriculum, but boy, it could be incredibly helpful. So I like your glass half full perspective. Let's see what HeyPi has to say.
All right.
HeyPi, what do you think about teacher education preparation programs? Will they be ready to prepare teachers for this new and different world that is being so dramatically impacted by artificial intelligence?
That's a great question. Teacher education preparation programs will certainly need to adapt to the changing landscape brought about by artificial intelligence, AI. Here are some ways they might want to do that. 1. Integrating technology. Programs should emphasize the integration of technology in the classroom, including AI-powered tools and resources that can enhance teaching and learning. 2. Digital literacy. Teacher candidates should develop digital literacy skills, including the ability to evaluate and use AI-generated content effectively and ethically. 3. Problem solving and critical thinking. Teachers will need to focus on developing their students' problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity skills, as these will become increasingly important in an AI-driven world. Overall, teacher education programs will need to evolve to ensure that teachers are equipped to navigate the challenges and opportunities presented by AI in the classroom.
Funny that Pi didn't give an actual opinion, just described what the scenario might look like. And interesting that the very first answer, right, was use technology and then use AI simulations as a support, very much like the story you just relayed.
We're once again in line with HeyPi.
It's a mind meld.
This is always my favorite hour of the week. So we got down and boogied with some AI music. We examined districts putting students in the thick of the AI conversation. We looked at a trio of stories from a tale of two very large cities, and then looked to our peers in higher ed for some insights. And finally got into the AI guilt and explored why we sometimes feel it and what to do about it.
Before we wrap, we want to thank the growing number of folks who are listening to us. It's really quite gratifying. As we travel around our own state and this region, it's been enormously rewarding to chat with folks who are listening and hearing their feedback. So now we got a listener challenge. The task is to grow this ChatEDU audience and community. It's so effective for us to hear what people are interested in and thinking about. So we would love it if you know a teacher in another state or another country. We'd be so grateful if you share the podcast page, skills21.org/podcast.
Please like, follow, rate, and review our podcast, and follow us on Instagram at ChatEDUPod.
And if you have a question for our chat back section, please email us at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's chatedu@edadvance.org.
ChatEDU is recorded at EdAdvance, the Regional Education Service Center in Litchfield, Connecticut. ChatEDU is produced and edited by Ahmed Malik, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussion to life. Additional support provided by Jonathan Costa and Abby Waldron. We are grateful for their invaluable contributions to the success of this podcast. And a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey of exploring the innovative integration of AI in education.
See you next time.
Bye.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at EdAdvance. I want to thank you for listening to ChatEDU, our podcast that examines critical issues regarding the application of artificial intelligence in the pre-K-12 learning space. New episodes will drop every 2 weeks throughout the rest of this school year. We appreciate your interest in ChatEDU.